So, German. How difficult is it to learn? Well, that's a big question, and I still have a lot to learn, but let's give it a go. To start with, I think German is a much more difficult language to learn for an English person than a Romance language. Of course, this opinion will be slightly biased by the fact that most of my language learning so far has been Romance languages, but I still think this statement is true. This was my second time trying to learn German. The first time was when I was on my foreign languages for business course when I was 18 through 21. It was an additional language to add to French and Spanish, which I had been learning for 7 and 6 years respectively at school, then college. The course did not go particularly well. I don't think any of us who took it actually got much of a handle on German by the end of it. We didn't have much time dedicated to it either, which wouldn't have helped. After those 3 years, I never touched German again. I could understand the odd sentence you might hear on the news, that kind of thing, but as for constructing any kind of sentence, that was soon lost. So, tens of years later, here I am trying again. What did I remember? Well, some of the words were still in my head. A surprising amount, really, although with a big layer of dust laying upon them. The pronunciation was still pretty much there as well, although not perfect. And still not perfect. However, the grammar. I knew that word order was different, but couldn't really have told you how. I knew there were cases, but had no memory of how they were formed or what they did, or what they even were. Neither did I have any memory of the formation of tenses. Those were some big things I'd forgotten. The thing is, it has been said that German should be reasonably easy for an English person because of the fact that a lot of our words have a Germanic derivation. And yes, those words are relatively easy. However, there are a lot of words, and I mean a lot, that bear little resemblance to English. Some of those words bear some resemblance to Romance language words, but not many that I've seen so far. The ones that are totally alien are quite difficult for me to get stuck in my brain, because I have nothing to nudge me in the right direction. I know that will become easier as I begin to read in the language, and I've probably retained a lot more of them than I feel I have in my passive store. But it is difficult. I think the main problem with German, though, is there are so many things to remember that are different from English. Let's take word order. A simple single phrase sentence is not too bad. But once you get to subordinate clauses or modal verbs, where verbs can get thrown to the end, things get hairy. And then you have adjectives. Time, place. These don't necessarily end up naturally where an English speaker would put them. And that's before we even think about cases. If you've learnt languages that use cases before, this is probably a breeze. If you haven't, it most definitely isn't. Almost every time I have to look at a table of all the endings to check if I've got it right. But that relies on me knowing which case it should be in the first place. I wouldn't say any of this is properly stuck yet, because there are so many variations of endings. It feels like it will never stick. I know this is unlikely to be true, but it feels that way right now. One of the biggest problems with this particular element is the duplication, by which I mean the same word, or should I say same combination of letters in the same order, being used for different parts of different cases. You can't just think it says der, so it's a masculine noun, because der is also feminine dative and feminine and plural genitive. How did this happen? The other thing I'm still not sure about and will have to do a lot more research on, because Duolingo really isn't up to giving me conclusive rules, is some of the tenses. Let's start with the subjunctive, because that's where you always start, right? No, it's just the easiest to talk about first, because there are 2 subjunctives. I couldn't, for the life of me, work out what tenses I was being shown. So I went onto the internet because my grammar book confused me just as much, and I found this post by Olesen Tuition, which explained everything in such detail about the 2 different types of subjunctive. It was like a breath of fresh air. I'll leave a link in the description. What Germans call the subjunctive is in part what other languages just call the conditional. Not completely, it does have the other elements of subjunctives, but it's also conditional, just with another name. Also, the other tenses, and don't take any of this as gospel, I'm still confused by. It seems the imperfect is mainly used in non-literary situations for just a few verbs, like to be and to have. I don't have a proper list of these yet. That's something I need to do. The functions that the imperfect usually fulfills are taken by a passive past tense, using an auxiliary. The regular past works like other language with 2 auxiliaries and a past participle, and might cover more situations than other languages. Maybe. The future uses an auxiliary and an infinitive. There are 3 auxiliary verbs depending on tense and verb. I'm very rocky on all of this, and Duolingo didn't even get into the more complex past tenses, and virtually none of this was explained. What was explained was in bite-sized pieces that didn't make a lot of sense in the whole scheme of things. You can't learn this stuff just by osmosis. You can't, it's too complicated. So, can I understand German now? Well, yes and no to the limits of my vocabulary. Can I construct sentences? Again, yes and no. The more complex the sentence, the more shaky my accuracy is. The truth is, I just need to consume a lot more content in German, do more research on the grammar rules, whilst practicing my sentence structure on my Duolingo daily refresh. Oh yes, and I never even mentioned strong and weak verbs.